Welcome back to Open Your Eyes. We're moving now into our first segment for the morning. And this one, of course, been hitting the newscast, hitting the waves by storm, of course. And we've got in to talk to us about this entire situation, which, of course, a deeper understanding of what the Blue Bond is and how it will reduce the Super Bond. Christopher Coye is in with us. He's the Minister of State in the Ministry of Finance. Sir, good morning.
Good morning.
And how are you today?
Not bad.
All right. So it's trying to get a deeper understanding of what the Blue Bond is and how it will reduce the Super Bond. We have been having extended conversations on the Super Bond. We understand that one. But the Blue Bond, what is the Blue Bond?
Well, before I get into the Blue Bond, I think I should explain a little bit about the process.
Yes.
And getting here. We've gone through, I'd say, almost 8 months of parallel negotiations. One, certainly with the Nature Conservancy, trying to get to an acceptable set of terms with the Nature Conservancy, and secondly with the Creditors Committee. Even before we embarked on that, we had to establish what we wanted to accomplish. Coming into government as a new administration, you had to look at where we are and what we needed to do to address the challenges that we were immediately facing.
Yeah.
So that certainly meant looking at the economics of the situation, the fiscal challenges that we had, the debt, the primary deficits. All of those things meant that we had to look at our homegrown recovery plan. And how do we develop that plan in a way that addresses these challenges. Implementing that plan was the next step. We had 130% debt to GDP, all the figures that we've all gone through, the contraction of the economy. So we had to look at what we needed to do to bring things back on track. A significant part of that was addressing the budget, looking at the budget. And we had to make tough decisions very early in the day, decisions that I'm sure no government would want to make. Cutting expenditures, slashing expenditures, the salary cut. All of those had to play an integral part in the process of our economic recovery. To that extent, that was critical for us in our debt, our strategic debt management plans. When we looked at where we were, obviously we needed to look at how we start reducing our debt load. It certainly was is at an unsustainable level, and we needed to immediately address that situation. So in doing that, having those discussions first with the IMF, I am hopeful, but I'm not sure that they believed that we were willing to make the tough decisions that we said we would in pursuance of our homegrown plan. But we proved ourselves. We followed through with what our plans were, what our commitments were, as hard as they were. The public officers and teachers, all that we went through with respect to that, I think that reflects a new belief in what our commitments were. So from that, we got from the IMF their staff report, which acknowledged that we needed to do restructuring. That in itself was important. And following from that, it gave us credibility as well. So as we built that credibility by making these tough decisions, we put ourselves in a better position to negotiate with the bondholders. As we started our negotiations with bondholders, we went through a process where we put forward a bond exchange offer first. We didn't go with a cash offer. We went to that, but we had to build that credibility that they would be no more willing to have or take a larger haircut. So then when we engaged with the TNC and we reached a point where we felt that we could now integrate both processes, that's when we went to that cash offer with the TNC.
So let me just get in there and be able. When the economic recovery plan was presented, as you pointed out, some of the factors included the reduction in public wage, the cutting of expenditures, and the restructuring of the debt was a very important part of it. Originally, what was presented was looking at being able to get a haircut from the bondholders. In other words, cutting down on, as you said, it's a bond exchange. But we had heard from the committee of bondholders that they, in fact, were only interested in negotiating if Belize would ascribe to an IMF program. Was that part of why the shift took place from pursuing a haircut to moving towards the cash exchange instead?
No, I think we had that in our plans from the outset, that we having those initial discussions. And if you recall, in the very early days of the administration, we went through a process at the Senate of ratifying the New York Convention on Foreign Arbitral Awards. And there was this all this concern over what really it meant and all of that. That was a significant part of going through the TNC negotiations. That represented an opening for us to get political risk insurance from the US's International Development Finance Corporation. Without that ratification, that we would not have been eligible for that political risk insurance. So that was in effect a signal that we are already negotiating with them from way back then.
Okay.
But with respect to the different types of offers, whether it's a bond exchange or a cash offer, we had that intent from the very start as we were moving along, but we had to feel comfortable that we would reach a stage where we could make that cash offer to the bondholders.
And the negotiation, as you said, with TNC, what were some of the things that you said you had to feel comfortable with the agreement? What were some of the things from government's perspective that were important in negotiating that deal?
Well, certainly I guess there are two levels as far as those negotiations are concerned. We have to look at the financial terms,
yes.
and of course we have to look at the conservation commitments that are being asked of us. In both instances, we have to look at what we can live with, what is fair to us, what is reasonable to us. We can't just take whatever is put in front of us. We have to look for that best deal for Belize, both with that TNC arrangement as well as with the bondholders. And so we went through and are still finalizing those arrangements with the TNC as well.
So let's try to break down the concept of the blue bond. It is not unique to just Belize. In fact, this is a program that TNC has already initiated with other countries as well. And what essentially it is that they will provide the cash for us to buy back the super bond at a discounted rate.
Well, I would say while it may have occurred before, it is highly infrequent at this point in time. I believe one of the first blue bond financings were in Seychelles. That I think was around 5 years ago. I think fully consummated in terms of the conservation commitments a few years ago, but that was a baby compared to ours. That was $20 million. So this is, if successful, this would be by far the biggest blue bond financing in the world historically. So it would be a historic achievement for Belize and as well for the TNC. With respect, I don't know if you want me to go into more detail. I was explaining about how we're getting to this point in time. Now, where we are with respect to the super bond itself. As far as that is concerned, what the offer that is about to be launched, I believe it will be launched by no later than tomorrow, the formal offer, what that offer will be is the 55 cents on the dollar.
Yes.
That 55 cents is split into two components. 51.7 cents will be the principal component, the principal haircut. And the 3.3 cents that add up to that 55 cents is the past due interest. Remember, government hasn't paid interest for roughly a year now. So that has added up and is due. What the proposition is, once the offer is launched, is for us to try and reach that 75% threshold by November 19th. Between, let's say, tomorrow and November 19th, the bondholders will have the opportunity to sign up to that offer. If they do sign up to that offer, they will get the full 55 cents, including the past due interest. If we reach the 75% threshold before November 19th, and you, a bondholder, didn't sign up by November 19th, you will not get that 3.3 cents on the dollar. So there is an incentive for you to try and sign up and get that cash now. Belize, unfortunately, international community, I think, I don't know if it was an interview with you, has been called a serial defaulter, right? So it might make sense.
In other words, we hard pay.
Yes.
Right?
So if you have somebody hard pay that has cash, maybe you want to take that cash now.
I'll take what I can get now versus wait
And-
indefinitely until they can pay it back.
And the point that goes along with that is that this is cash that comes from a third party. We don't have that cash. So in this scenario, we have already negotiated as best as we can with the TNC and Credit Suisse, who is really the underwriter, to get those funds. We are at the same time looking at our ability to support or service that debt. So we are where we are as a government, we are on the edge with the TNC as to what they are prepared to put out, or what Credit Suisse is prepared to put out. We can't go any further. This is the best that we can offer to the bondholders. If the bondholders don't take up this deal, I don't know how they will. The TNC withdraws from the table. I don't know how we will service the super bond debt going forward. So the bondholder.
Let me just try to break this down for a moment. So I owe you money, and I don't have it. I haven't had it. I haven't been able to pay you all the terms for as long as possible. I get John to give me the money. John says, I'll give you as much as, well, we're at 55 cents per dollar for you to pay back Minister Coye. I make that offer to you. You'll either take it or wait until I find the actual money, which I've been very inconsistent in being able to secure.
You were to pay me from 3 years ago. You defaulted.
You are now putting out that offer this week, hoping that you've gotten 50% of the bondholders so far to agree, but you need 75 because that is the actual term in the agreement for the super bond. How optimistic are we that the bondholders, the remaining at least 25%, will take the offer?
I think two things with that, just to be absolutely clear. The collective action clause, that's the clause that talks about the 75%. If we reach that 75% threshold, then all 100% of the bondholders are bound by the terms of that offer. So whether you if you didn't want to sign up and you said I'll hold out and sue and whatever to get the 100 cents on the dollar, if we get to 75%, too bad for you. You will be at 55 cents on the dollar.
The majority agreed, so that's your deal.
That's that collective action action clause.
And how optimistic?
But
sure.
No, I was just going to ask about the remaining 25% that is needed.
Right. So as far as getting to that point, we depend on the advice of our financial advisors, our strategic advisors, and they are confident enough that in advising us that we should launch this offer. So the expectation is that we will be able to reach that point. It's not a guarantee, it's not a certainty, it's aspirational, but certainly we have that advice that the city, as our financial advisor, their trading desk will take on that role of getting the bondholders committed.
The assumption here is, if you go back to the same scenario, is you've not gotten anything from me, so most likely you'll take what you can get now in cash.
Well, I wouldn't want to put it that way, but
I'm just trying to simplify something that is very complex. But that's what the offer is. That will be.
Well, this is the best that we can offer.
And which leads me to because the PM actually came out making statements, which simply means that there is a level of confidence from GOB with respect to this entire deal. How optimistic is GOB with respect to what's going on at this point?
Well, we just last week went through those discussions, finalizing the principal terms of this deal with the creditors committee, their group, and they were the ones who jointly willing to issue that press release. So it's a clear indication of that willingness to sign on to the offer. Going forward, like I said, we do depend on the advice from our financial advisors as to what they think will be successful. So based on that, we have a reasonable level of confidence that we will reach that point. As I said, not a guarantee, but we look forward and are hopeful to reach that point.
Now let's go back to what is a critical part of the conversation. And if we use the same analogy, what's in it for John? What's in it for TNC and for Credit Suisse to provide this financing to Belize?
Well, that's I'm glad you raised that. That's the second part. As I mentioned, we have been in parallel negotiations. So we're trying to get this money to pay the bondholders. That source is through the TNC. They have come to the table, said we're prepared to arrange the financing. They're not lending us the money. Credit Suisse is underwriting this transaction. So let's say the total debt right now is roughly 572 million US. 1.144 billion Belize dollars is the super bond debt. If we take the 55% of that, it's a little over 300 million US, or over 650 million Belize dollars.
In savings?
In savings we're around $500 million if this deal goes through. But in terms of the payout, 325 to between 325 350 US dollars, or 650 million Belize dollars. Now that is what we're trying to raise. That is what TNC has arranged for us to get. But there are conditions, there are terms, financial and conservation. On the financial side, what the expectation is, or the substantive terms would be, is that we would have, in effect, a 19-year term loan, a note, what they call an impact note. Under that, we would have a step up in terms of the interest rate. We would start off at 3.2%, then move to 3.7%, then 5.3%, and ultimately around 6%. That step up is perfect for us in the sense that both the step up and the term is perfect for us in the sense that we are at our low point. Cash flow is king. So we have to manage our cash flow to get back on track. So at 3.2%, what we're looking at is for the year, roughly $10 million US in interest payments. That's 20 million Belize. Under the super bond, that was over $50 million.
Wow.
So it's a huge,
difference.
difference in cash flow savings over the life, or I should say over the 5-year term of this administration. We would enjoy cash flow savings of around $130 million in just those 5 years. That is immense so far as helping to get us back on track with our budget and our overall cash flow. So you not only have the debt reduction of roughly $500 million and debt relief of that amount, but we also will enjoy cash flow relief of over $130 million and growing over the life of the loan. If you look at gross flows relative to the super bond, you're talking about $580 million in savings. So those are the financial terms with respect to that.
And also longer too.
Yes, the 19-year terms. I should mention that from 2021 or through to 2030, we would be doing interest only. Under the super bond, it's similar, but you have to pay the full principal from 2030 to 2034. In this instance, that's stretched out with a smaller principal, 55% smaller principal. That will be stretched out from 2031 to 2040. So we have basically 9 or 10 years within which to pay off the principal side of it. So it is certainly far more a smoother cash flow impact for us that enables us over the long term to be able to actually satisfy that blue bond debt. Along with that, and this is where people ask, well, why would what's in it for the blue bond holders, Credit Suisse and the blue bond holders? Well, it in effect becomes a U.S. bilateral debt, because what we have is this debt that is going to be insured by the U.S.'s International Development Finance Corporation. So if we were to default, the Development Finance Corporation would step in and pay the debt. Now we would be obliged to the DFC. The government would be obliged to the DFC directly at that point in time, but the bondholders would get covered by that insurance wrapper. So it becomes a pretty secure bond for any of the bondholders. We also have what you call a debt service reserve account of roughly 10 million that's packaged in to that blue bond. So from a financial standpoint, it's relatively secure. It's not only affordable for us, but it is secure for the blue bond holder.
Much more serviceable as well.
Yes, by far.
For us.
Yes. As I mentioned, we like in the first year, as an example, we would be down to 20 million versus 50 million if we were to stay with the super bond.
And looking at it, the reason it's called the blue bond is because of the marine conservation efforts that are tied in.
Right. So as we spoke about, the two components, the financial and then the conservation side. On the conservation side, we have to make certain conservation commitments. And that, as I mentioned, we have been negotiating on some of those conservation commitments as well. But ultimately, the main commitment that we are looking to agree to is in terms of biodiversity zones. Belize has biodiversity zones and commitments on biodiversity zones already. We have, I think, between 15 and 20% of medium and high biodiversity zones to which we are already committed. We are further committed that by 2030 we will increase those protection, the high and medium biodiversity zones to 30%. what we are agreeing under this blue bond arrangement is that we would reduce the time within which we would reach that commitment from 2030 to 2020. I think it's 2026. So we just are saying we will get there faster than what we have already committed to.
Okay.
We are now committing to you to get there faster.
And this is I think what is innovative about this program coming out from the TNC is that the savings is a part of what's being used to be able to ensure marine conservation. What percentage are we committing? Have we those terms defined as yet?
There are two things, just to be a little more precise. When we talk about these higher biodiversity zones, the parts of the negotiation is so that we don't affect or adversely affect the livelihoods of fisher folk.
Yes.
So when we look at that, where the commitments will be in the exclusive economic zone, beyond the reef.
Okay.
So yes, we are going to reach or increase by 10% or 10 to 15% to get to that 30%. But that's going to be in the exclusive economic zone. So then the fisher folk who aren't fishing in that zone will not be significantly affected.
Yeah.
So that's where some of the main commitments are. We also agreed to an integrated coastal development, coastal zone management plan, as well as in terms of the Belize Barrier Reef Reserve system, that whatever remaining public lands would be protected areas. So those are the extent of commitments, and we have committed or would have or will have committed over a period of 5 to 6 years to the completion of those commitments.
Yeah.
I missed the second part that you were.
I was asking what percentage of the savings we would use,
Oh.
because it's a
Okay,
endowment.
so that this is, I guess,
Yeah.
an in-between, in a sense,
Yeah.
between the financial and conservation. What we are committing is for a conservation financing arrangement. Under that arrangement, Belize will contribute roughly $8 million, or a little over $8 million a year into a conservation trust fund.
Yes.
Part of the blue bond financing enable us as well to get roughly $23.5 million US to fund or pre-fund the endowment for that conservation trust. The intent is that over a period of the life of this bond, we will accumulate roughly $184 million in that trust fund that will be able to fund marine conservation projects in perpetuity. So the flows that generate from the return of that large endowment will be able to finance marine conservation projects in perpetuity. That doesn't mean that we're starting that 20 years from now.
Yeah.
We're actually starting that
It's going to be incremental. Yeah.
as we start.
And that's why Nature Conservancy or an environmental agency is involved. This is kind of the main thrust here.
Yes, that's
But who manages it, though? Who will make the decision as to where this money will be spent?
the governance is part of what we are also negotiating on, but certainly the expectation is that it will be majority, in effect, TNC led. What we ensure or seek to ensure is not only government representation on the trust, which has been agreed, but also that we have local majority Belizean involvement in the trust. I think it's important that just in the case of the Maya Forest Trust, that we become more involved, not in terms of menial tasks, but at a managerial level with respect to anything that concerns Belize, including conservation. So that for us as an administration is one of those points that we are firm on.
Okay.
And so that when you talk about the conservation trust and who will manage, that's where we're looking for local NGOs, government representation, besides the foreign NGO.
Wow. And of course, while we have you here, and thanks for clarity on what's going on at this particular point, we wouldn't want to let you go without asking the rebounding situation with Belize's economy. We know how it was or how it is, especially in times of COVID. Where are we at this particular point?
That's a good question. I think if you look at the path that we are on, it is certainly a path that, in effect, we were falling off a cliff when this new administration came into government. We had to learn how to fly, basically. So yes, there was an initial downward fall in the first quarter, but that was showing a slowing. So whereas we were contracting roughly 14%, and including in the last 2 quarters of last year, the first quarter we did contract, but by 8%. So that showed the slowing of the contraction, and by the second quarter we took off, and we grew roughly 22%, led by agriculture at almost 25%, and not far behind by tourism, around a little under 20%. That's just reflecting that we are ahead of target, ahead of what the expectations of the IFIs, including IMF, expected. But we have a lot more to do, a lot further to go. It's not that we are in any place of comfort. We have quite a bit more to get done. Unemployment is still high. It has come down substantially, but we need to get more people employed. How do we do that? We need more investment. The investment summit that's coming up in early November is a reflection of our commitment to attracting investment, not only foreign investment, but domestic investment as well. And that's where we look at many areas of how do we enhance the ease of doing business in Belize. Belize is comparatively one of the hardest places in the world to do business. We need to reverse that, and we have been going down that path. I think today at the Senate meeting, we will be looking to pass several legislation that seek to support that endeavor in terms of the company's amendment, the stamp duties amendment, both looking to reduce the cost of starting a business as well as the ease of starting a business, which for Belize, I think we're ranked 166 out of 190 countries. So we have a lot of work to do there, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, I think most people in Belize have experienced the pain of trying to access services, so that's been a challenge. But when you talk about how we have been faring off so far and identifying agriculture and tourism being kind of the main drivers at this point, how concerned are you that we are still at the same place where we started? This particular administration spoke about diversifying, and we understand that agriculture and very much tourism are very fickle with our current global situation.
But I think that's where there's a marked difference. I think you could recall last year there was restrictions, if not prohibition, on exporting of cattle, as an example. Soon as the administration changed, that changed. I think just yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, the minister was in by the border as a large export of cattle was going to be undertaken directly into Mexico. That the minister has to be lauded for all the efforts he has put in. Has been very aggressive and tireless in his efforts, not only on traditional products, but on cattle and all different areas, different products, whether it's grains, corn, beans, etc. Trying to develop markets, access new markets, Mexico being a key one. But the diversification of the agricultural sector, I think, needs to be underscored. It's not just limited to those traditional products anymore. It's the diversification of that sector. Getting into value added is going to be that next level within agriculture itself. We've spoken about it, but what has been done with it? One sector that should never be ignored anymore is the BPO sector.
Yeah.
The BPO sector in the time of COVID has emerged, has increased in employment. I think estimates from the BPO Association is that they now generate over 90 million US in foreign exchange earnings.
Wow.
If you look at some of the main members of the new BPO Association, they already employ over 6,000 persons within that one sector. So there are new emerging sectors that are coming about. It's not just basic traditional agriculture and tourism anymore.
Let's bring it back into perspective. If we're able to finalize, I think the settlement date is, interestingly, November 19th. Did we set that date?
I think that's just the, again,
that was
that's
just a
the discussion.
coincidence. If everything is able to be finalized, and what's the timeline that we're looking at?
Well, I suppose the earlier the better. Getting to that 75%, the outside date would be the November 19th, but we are hopeful that we would get there sooner than that. That said, there's quite a bit of legal documentation that needs to be put together and prepared. These are in principle agreements, but we have to get dot the I's and cross the T's and all of that stuff. The legal documentation has to be prepared, and that takes some time. So part of the reason for that space of time is also that the attorneys will be able to prepare the relevant documents, not only on the super bond side, but on the TNC side. As far as I understand, there are about 20 different legal documents on the TNC transaction itself. So there's a lot of legal work to be done to complete.
Yeah.
All right. Minister Coye, it was great having you in this morning. We totally appreciate the fact that you came in to break down the scenario there and, of course, explain to us what the Blue Bond is. And thank you for joining us this morning.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. We're about to take a break. When we come back, we'll be discussing with an advisor of the Santa Familia Village Council. I'll be sharing to us how the villagers are feeling at this point following the shooting death of Jesse Escobar. Stay with us. We'll be right back.